The Whispering Vale of Eldoria ****. The first time Orion saw the vale, he was a boy of 10. Hiding behind the thick roots of an ancient elm at the edge of the Whispering Woods, the air shimmered there, a soft pulse of light weaving between the branches, as if the world itself had exhaled a secret. Legends whispered in his village spoke of Eldoria, a realm suspended between memory and dream, a place where the lost thoughts of the past wandered freely, and the future's faint shadow could be glimpsed if one was patient enough to watch. Orion had never been patient, yet something about the vale called to him in a way that unsettled his curiosity and ignited a quiet thrill deep in his chest. He remembered the sensation clearly, the hum beneath his feet, the feeling of the soil breathing, the faint scent of jasmine and rain mingling in the air. No one had ever seen the vale and returned unchanged. Elders spoke of those who peered too long, their eyes reflecting something not quite human, something ancient and alive. Orion felt that tug, a magnetic pull threading through his very bones, urging him to step closer. He did not move at first, merely watched as light rippled over the landscape beyond the trees, colors bending in ways the eye could scarcely hold. His first encounter with the vale was brief. A sudden rustle in the underbrush, a fox, perhaps, or something else, made him retreat. Yet even as he ran back toward the village, the vision of Eldoria clung to him, like dew on grass, refusing to be forgotten. Days passed, and every quiet moment, every lull in his daily chores, his mind wandered back to the glimmering border between worlds. He drew maps of it in secret, sketching its curves and swirls, marking where the light seemed to thicken, and where shadows hinted at passageways deeper than ordinary eyes could see. As he grew, the call of the vale grew louder. By 16, Orion was no longer the timid boy hiding behind roots. He was a young man shaped by secrets, by whispers no one else seemed to hear. His nights were spent tracing the edges of dreams, deciphering riddles spoken by the wind, listening to voices that hinted at choices and paths hidden to common sight. It was in these hours that he began to notice the small peculiarities of the world around him, the way shadows sometimes moved against the grain of sunlight, the way mirrors seemed to pulse with quiet energy, reflecting more than what was merely in front of them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills like molten gold, Orion returned to the Whispering Woods, guided by instinct more than plan. The vale shimmered ahead, more vivid than ever, and he felt the familiar hum of its presence against his chest. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer than he had ever dared. The air shifted instantly, cooler and heavier, tinged with a sound like the murmur of 1,000 distant voices speaking all at once. And then, as he crossed the threshold, the world tilted. The trees around him elongated, their leaves reflecting colors unseen by mortal eyes. The ground rippled as though liquid, and a faint path of light uncoiled before him. He realized with a jolt that this path was not laid by anyone in the physical world. It had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone like him. The path led Orion deeper into the vale, through glades that felt impossibly large and valleys where the air hummed with knowledge. There were creatures, though none with teeth or claws, that moved in patterns both mesmerizing and unsettling. Shadows of forgotten memories, perhaps, or echoes of lives that had brushed against this realm before him. One in particular, a figure draped in silver mist, watched him silently from a distance. Whenever he approached, it receded, yet he felt no fear. There was recognition in its gaze, a silent message that this was only the beginning. Hours, or maybe days, past time had little meaning here. Orion felt both exhaustion and exhilaration in equal measure. He discovered glistening pools where reflection was impossible, yet the surface whispered truths, revealing glimpses of paths he might walk in the waking world. In one particularly quiet hollow, the wind carried a voice so soft he almost thought it was his imagination. "The vale remembers," it said. "It waits for those who listen." Orion's heart hammered as he realized the gravity of the words. The vale did not merely show. It remembered, held histories, choices, and possibilities in its folds. Everything that had ever been, and everything that could be, left traces here. And he, standing in the midst of its shimmer, felt both infinitesimal and immense. There was a beauty that demanded reverence, a quiet warning in the way light and shadow played across his vision. To move recklessly was to vanish. To pause, to consider, was to grow. Night, or whatever the vale's approximation of night might be, fell over the strange landscape. Bioluminescent plants unfurled their delicate tendrils, casting pale light that danced across his path. Orion felt a sudden pang of loneliness, for the realm was alive but silent, uninhabited by any soul that spoke in words he could understand. And yet, he was not entirely alone. Every rustle, every faint glow, every whisper of the wind was part of a conversation, a slow unfolding of truths. It was as though the veil itself had begun to teach him its language, and he, eager and patient in a way he had never been before, was learning. A sudden shift in the air made him pause. A bridge, delicate and shimmering, stretched over a chasm that seemed to fall infinitely. Across it, a light pulsed with rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Without knowing why, Orion stepped onto the bridge, feeling it sway underfoot yet holding firm. With every step, he felt layers of the world peel away, revealing hidden patterns of reality. Memories he had never lived seemed to brush against his mind, lessons unspoken, warnings he could not yet comprehend. At the center of the bridge, the heartbeat light intensified, and he saw her, an echo of someone both ancient and ageless, with eyes like molten silver and hair flowing like liquid night. She did not speak, yet her gaze pierced him to the core. "Do you seek or are you found?" The veil seemed to ask, not with words, but with the trembling of light and shadow. Arian's throat tightened. He did not know whether he saw it, or whether the veil itself had decided he was ready to be known. In that moment, a sudden clarity struck him. The veil was not merely a place to explore, but a mirror of the self, a realm where intentions, fears, and desires took form. To journey here was to confront truths one might never face in the waking world. He realized the weight of what he had discovered. Eldoria was alive not just with memory, but with the consciousness of those who had dared to enter, and perhaps even with the will to guide or challenge them. As dawn or its semblance crept over the horizon, Orion stepped off the bridge, feeling the pulse of the veil resonate through him. He had glimpsed something profound, a fragment of understanding that would shape his path forever. And yet, the figure of silver mist waited, always beyond reach, a reminder that the journey was far from over. The first chapter of his encounter with Eldoria had begun, and the whispers promised that much more awaited. The veil was patient, eternal, and infinitely watchful, and Orion, now more than a boy, felt the stirrings of purpose awakening within him, a sense that he was no longer merely an observer, but a participant in the unfolding story of the realm itself. He returned to the edge of the Whispering Woods at last, stepping back into the village that seemed smaller, simpler, and yet filled with unseen threads connecting it to a larger tapestry. He carried with him not just memories, but questions, a sense of destiny entwined with wonder, and an understanding that the veil would call again, and when it did, he must answer. And so began Arian's journey, the first step along a path that promised revelations, trials, and discoveries beyond imagination, where every choice echoed through layers of reality, and every whisper of the wind could shift the course of the world itself. The morning after his first journey through the veil, Orion awoke with a strange heaviness in his chest, as if the light of Eldoria had left traces of itself inside him. He could still feel the pulse of the bridge, the heartbeat light, and the gaze of the silver mist figure lingering behind his eyelids. Villagers went about their routines unaware, their voices distant echoes, and Orion felt a peculiar separation from the mundane world. The veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary had grown thinner for him, and he could no longer ignore the pull of the hidden realm. He returned to the Whispering Woods that evening, carrying only a small satchel filled with water, dried bread, and a notebook. Every step toward the veil seemed predestined, yet the forest itself tested him. Shadows shifted as if to mislead him, roots twisted into shapes that whispered doubts and half-formed memories. The veil had its own way of measuring intention, and Orion realized that patience alone would not suffice. The veil demanded courage and clarity, an understanding that the path forward could only be claimed by those willing to see the world as it truly was. Crossing the threshold, he was immediately aware of the subtle changes. The pools that had reflected impossible truths now shimmered with deeper, more intricate patterns, as if the veil was revealing a new layer of itself. The light no longer simply pulsed, it spoke. The wind carried faint echoes of laughter and sighs, voices that seemed to emerge from the very roots of the world. Orion felt a tremor of exhilaration and unease. Eldoria was alive in ways he had not anticipated, and the deeper he went, the more he understood that the realm was not passive, it was responsive. Every movement, every glance, every thought shaped the landscape around him. A path of amber light emerged ahead, winding through crystalline groves that seemed to breathe. Each step forward brought new revelations, flowers that hummed with memory, stones that radiated warmth, and trees whose bark rippled like water under his fingertips. He realized that the veil was more than a place, it was a consciousness, an entity vast and patient, testing those who wandered its halls. And then, among the trees, he glimpsed the silver mist figure again, standing as if waiting for him. Its presence was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder that he was being watched and guided. Though not instructed, the figure beckoned him with a subtle motion, and Orion followed, stepping into a valley illuminated by floating orbs of gentle luminescence. Here, he discovered doors, not made of wood or metal, but of woven light, each etched with symbols that shifted under his gaze. Tentatively, he reached for one, and the surface shimmered, revealing a vision of himself not as he was, but as he might become, a young man tempered by trials, aware of paths he had yet to walk, and in possession of knowledge that could alter not only his fate but the fate of those around him. A voice, soft yet insistent, threaded through the air. "Every choice leaves a mark," it whispered. "Every hesitation writes a shadow." Orion realized the weight of his actions. The veil did not merely reflect reality. It amplified intention, turning thought into consequence. And within that amplification, he understood, lay both danger and opportunity. The paths of Eldoria were living records of possibility, waiting for someone willing to step forward and shape them. As he ventured deeper, he came upon a circle of stones glowing faintly beneath a sky streaked with surreal hues. The stones hummed in a cadence that resonated with his heartbeat, synchronizing with his thoughts. Standing within the circle, Orion felt a rush of insight. Visions unspooling across his mind, cities of light suspended above forests, rivers flowing with colors beyond comprehension, creatures of shifting form that moved with purpose, their eyes reflecting wisdom centuries old. Each vision seemed fleeting, yet left a tangible impression, a sensation of memory that was not his own. Among these impressions, one image remained vivid: a city on the edge of a cliff, its spires shining like molten glass, and a figure at the highest tower, looking directly at him. The silver mist figure, perhaps, or something else, a guardian of the veil's secrets. Orion sensed that this place, and the figure within it, held a key to understanding the deeper purpose of Eldoria. He knew instinctively that the journey ahead would test him as never before, demanding not only bravery but insight, compassion, and the capacity to navigate truths that were not always comfortable to witness. Arzor lifetimes passed in the silence of the veil. Orion explored groves where time seemed suspended, valleys where echoes of past travelers whispered guidance or warning, and bridges of light that arched over impossible depths. Each step revealed fragments of Eldoria's consciousness, a world not bound by ordinary rules, yet governed by logic as intricate as the most elaborate of puzzles. He began to notice patterns in the flow of energy, pathways that suggested decisions he might make, consequences he could influence. It was a dance of perception and intuition, and every misstep altered the rhythm. By what he perceived as nightfall, Orion reached a chamber of shifting light. The walls were fluid, reflecting his thoughts and emotions in shapes and colors that defied naming. The silver mist figure stood at the center, motionless, yet the air around it thrummed with expectation. As Orion approached, a resonance echoed through him, not threatening, but demanding recognition. "The veil watches those who watch," it seemed to say, "and remembers those who remember." He understood that his every action, every thought, would leave a trace in this realm, shaping it as it shaped him. With a surge of courage, he stepped closer, letting the light envelope him. A vision unfolded. He saw himself guiding others, interpreting the hidden whispers of the world, connecting realms and people in ways unimaginable. The veil did not promise easy paths. It promised discovery, transformation, and understanding that transcended ordinary perception. And within that vision, Orion glimpsed a faint outline of a labyrinth, a network of trials and revelations waiting beyond the immediate paths. The figure of silver mist faded into the radiant air, leaving him alone, yet charged with purpose. Emerging from the chamber, Orion felt the veil's pulse echoing in his own heartbeat. He knew the journey would not end here. Eldoria had begun to reveal its nature, but the deeper truths, the most profound lessons, were yet to come. Each step forward would demand courage, mindfulness, and the willingness to embrace both wonder and uncertainty. The veil was alive, aware, and patient. It awaited not only those who entered, but those who could listen, learn, and act with clarity. Returning to the outer edges of the forest, Orion carried with him the resonance of Eldoria. The village seemed quieter, smaller, yet layered with subtle signs that the world beyond the veil was intertwined with his own. Shadows fell differently, light played across surfaces with new meaning, and even the ordinary sounds, the creak of a door, The rustle of leaves seemed to carry messages, remnants of the realm he had traversed. He realized that the Vale's influence was not confined to its own borders. It rippled outward, touching every corner of his life, asking questions and awaiting answers that would only become clear through exploration and experience. As he lay beneath the stars that night, Orion felt the soft tug of Eldoria, gentle but insistent. The journey was far from over. The paths of the Vale were intricate and layered, and each choice he made, each step he dared to take, would echo through realms both seen and unseen. The silver mist figure was not gone. It lingered, a quiet promise and a subtle challenge, urging him forward. And in that awareness, Orion understood the truth. To walk the Vale was to walk a path of endless discovery, where the line between self and world blurred, and where the courage to see, remember, and act was the only way to unlock the mysteries of Eldoria. The air of Eldoria had changed when Orion returned, subtle yet unmistakable. Where before the Vale had shimmered with gentle invitation, now it hummed with expectation, a cadence that mirrored the heartbeat light from the bridge, steady and insistent. The forest around the threshold seemed to watch him as he approached, leaves bending in ways that suggested awareness, and roots curling with intent. Every step felt heavier, as though the realm itself measured his resolve. He realized that the Vale did not simply welcome travelers. It tested them, shaping the journey to match the depth of their understanding and the courage they carried. Crossing the threshold, Orion found the path before him altered. The amber light that once guided him now flickered unpredictably, splitting into multiple strands, each twisting and winding in a labyrinthine tangle. He knew that choosing a path here was not merely a matter of direction, but of intent and perception. Hesitation, he sensed, would not only mislead him but echo through the layers of Eldoria, leaving marks that could influence future decisions. Drawing a steadying breath, he let intuition guide him, stepping onto the strand that pulsed with warmth, resonating with his own heartbeat. The deeper he ventured, the more intricate the world became. Trees grew taller and denser, their trunks twisting into shapes that suggested symbols, messages encoded in bark and branch. The wind carried voices, not words, but impressions, emotions, memories, and glimpses of lives that had brushed against the Vale long before him. A river of silver light curved through the valley, reflecting not the sky above but fragments of possibilities, each ripple a potential choice, a chance to shape or be shaped by the realm. Orion understood that Eldoria was not static. It was alive, conscious, responding to the weight of his thoughts and the steadiness of his intentions. As he followed the river, a figure appeared on its surface, formed entirely of luminescent mist. It was not the silver mist figure he had seen before, yet its presence radiated familiarity and purpose. Orion sensed that this entity was a guardian, perhaps a guide, or even a challenge. Its form shifted continuously, folding in on itself and stretching outward, yet its gaze, if one could call it that, held him in place. Without a word, the figure gestured toward a cluster of crystalline spires that rose like frozen waterfalls in the distance. Orion understood instinctively that this was his destination, a place where insight awaited, yet the path would demand more than courage. It would demand clarity of heart and mind. Approaching the spires, he noticed the ground beneath his feet had transformed. Stones pulsed with subtle energy, arranged in patterns that resonated with the rhythm of the Vale. As he walked, the patterns shifted, guiding him with imperceptible nudges. Here, the Vale revealed a critical truth. To navigate Eldoria was not to dominate or force the world, but to move with it, to observe and harmonize with its currents. Every step became a meditation, a negotiation with a consciousness older than memory, demanding both humility and focus. Within the spire cluster, Orion discovered chambers suspended in midair, connected by bridges of light. Each chamber contained reflections not of his physical self, but of choices, fears, and aspirations. In one, he saw himself standing at a crossroads, each path illuminated by different energies, each symbolizing a distinct facet of his inner being. The lesson was clear. Eldoria mirrored not only the external world but the landscape of the mind and spirit. One could wander indefinitely, yet remain lost without the insight to discern intention from impulse, wisdom from desire. Ours perhaps lifetimes passed in contemplation. The silver river whispered alongside him, carrying visions that were both illuminating and unsettling. He saw cities built upon the memory of dreams, forests animated by thought, creatures that existed purely as the echoes of unspoken wishes. In each, a faint imprint of choice resonated. The lives that had walked here before, the consequences they had left behind, and the subtle interplay of action and reflection that shaped the realm. Eldoria, Orion realized, was a living chronicle. Each moment layered upon the next, a symphony of potential and consequence. A sudden shift in light drew him to the highest spire, a staircase spiraling upward, carved from shimmering crystal. The ascent was neither arduous nor easy. It demanded patience and attention, for every misstep altered the luminescence beneath his feet. Reaching the summit, he beheld a panoramic view of the Vale unlike any he had seen before. Valleys stretched infinitely, bridges wove intricate lattice across impossible chasms, and rivers of liquid light traced paths through floating islands. In the distance, the faint outline of the silver mist figure appeared once more, motionless yet commanding presence, a beacon calling him forward. In the silence of the summit, Orion felt the resonance of the Vale deepen within him. He sensed the intertwining of past and future, the delicate balance of choices, and the weight of possibility that stretched across every layer of Eldoria. A voice, soft yet insistent, threaded through the light. To see is to understand, to move is to shape, to endure is to become. He realized that the journey ahead would demand endurance of spirit as much as perception. Eldoria's secrets were not simply to be discovered, they were to be lived, experienced, and integrated into the very fabric of the self. Descending from the spire, Orion followed a path that led to a valley bathed in hues of twilight, though no sun existed to cast such light. Here, he encountered remnants of other travelers' shapes, impressions, echoes of those who had ventured before. Some shimmered brightly, imbued with clarity and insight. Others flickered and dissolved, caught between hesitation and understanding. He felt a pang of recognition. The Vale did not forgive carelessness, yet it rewarded attentiveness and courage. Each echo was both a warning and a guide, a record of what it meant to engage with Eldoria fully. In the center of the valley, a pool of liquid silver reflected not his form, but his intention. As he gazed, visions unfolded, paths he had yet to tread, lessons he would encounter, and choices that would define his journey. The Vale whispered truths without words, pressing upon him the understanding that every moment, every decision, carried resonance beyond immediate perception. He realized that the world beyond the Vale, and indeed the world within it, was shaped by those willing to observe, listen, and act with clarity and purpose. As the echoing twilight deepened, Orion felt the subtle tug of the silver mist figure once more. This was no longer mere guidance. It was a summons, an invitation to confront challenges that demanded the fullest measure of his understanding. He understood that the journey through Eldoria was not linear. It was a spiral, each layer revealing deeper truths and greater demands. The Vale had begun to test him not merely in perception or courage, but in his capacity to integrate insight, to act decisively, and to navigate the subtle interplay of reality and reflection. Returning to the forest edge, Orion carried with him a deepened resonance of the Vale. Each step was informed by the lessons of the day, and yet he understood that Eldoria's influence would extend far beyond the physical realm. Thoughts, intentions, and choices carried weight, echoing through layers of possibility, shaping the unfolding story of both his world and the Vale itself. The journey was far from over. The Vale was patient, eternal, and infinitely aware, and Orion, now attuned to its rhythms, felt the quiet thrill of purpose awakening within him, the knowledge that each return, each venture, each moment of attention, would bring him closer to the truths that Eldoria had long guarded. The Vale seemed to recognize Orion now, shifting subtly as he approached. The amber strands of light had multiplied, intertwining into intricate patterns that pulsed with a rhythm almost like thought itself. The air carried the faint vibration of anticipation, and even the ground beneath his feet seemed alive, responsive to the careful weight of each step. Orion understood with a sudden clarity. The Vale was no longer merely a place to explore, it was a living test of perception, patience, and insight, revealing its secrets only to those willing to surrender fully to its rhythm. He followed one of the winding strands, guided by instinct, yet aware that instinct alone was insufficient. The trees around him had grown taller, their canopies weaving a lattice that filtered light into fractal patterns, each shift conveying subtle messages. Shadows stretched and bent in ways that suggested both warning and guidance, and the whispering wind seemed to carry fragments of the past and echoes of travelers long gone. Orion felt the weight of unseen eyes, not threatening, but observant, evaluating, as if the Vale itself were gauging his readiness for what lay ahead. As he ventured deeper, the landscape became increasingly surreal. A river of liquid crystal meandered through a valley of floating islands, each suspended in space yet tethered by light thread bridges. Shapes flickered along the edges of vision, neither creature nor illusion, but reminders that Eldoria's consciousness extended beyond immediate perception. Orion noticed a recurring motif, spiral forms etched in stone, traced by glowing moss, echoing the pattern of his heartbeat and the pulse of the veil itself. These spirals seemed to suggest progression, movement, transformation, and unspoken guide to those who could interpret their meaning. Reaching the first floating island, he stepped onto its surface cautiously. The ground was firm yet hummed beneath his feet, as if reacting to his presence. At the center, a crystal pedestal held a small sphere of light, suspended midair and rotating slowly. Orion sensed that this was a challenge, though the nature of it was unclear. Approaching, he extended his hand, and the sphere expanded, filling his vision with a cascade of images, countless paths, branching endlessly, each decision sending ripples through the realm. He understood immediately the sphere reflected potential, not merely of the world around him, but of himself, revealing choices and their subtle consequences. A soft vibration drew his attention upward. Above him, a bridge of luminous threads arched toward another island, yet it shimmered with instability, folding and unfolding unpredictably. Orion knew that crossing it required more than courage, it required balance, attentiveness, and a willingness to adapt to the veil's flow. With steady breaths, he placed his first step, feeling the threads shift beneath him yet hold firm. Each subsequent step became a meditation, a negotiation with the realm itself. The veil's consciousness pulsed through the bridge, testing his awareness, rewarding his focus, guiding his movement with imperceptible nudges. Upon reaching the next island, Orion encountered a circle of crystalline pillars, each etched with symbols that shifted when observed from different angles. Touching one, he felt a surge of memory not his own, but belonging to another who had journeyed here before. Images of choice, courage, doubt, and perseverance flowed through him, leaving traces of insight. The veil, he realized, preserved not only the echoes of action, but the lessons embedded within them. Knowledge here was experiential. It could not be learned passively, only absorbed through participation, reflection, and alignment with the rhythm of the realm. He moved through the chamber, examining each pillar, each symbol, each pulse of light, until he reached the center. There, a pool of liquid silver reflected a vision of Eldoria unlike any he had seen, a convergence of paths, spirals, rivers, and bridges, forming an intricate map of choice and consequence. The silver mist figure appeared once more at the edge of the pool, its form fluid yet commanding, a silent reminder that the journey was ongoing. Orion felt both awe and determination. He understood that this realm demanded total engagement, requiring not only courage and perception, but the discipline to discern intention from impulse, clarity from distraction. Beyond the pool, the path led him to a grove where time seemed suspended. Flowers of impossible color swayed as if in slow motion, and the air carried whispers of lessons, reminders of prior challenges. Here, Orion sensed the veil's most subtle instruction. Yet, to progress, one must not only act with awareness but also attune to the rhythms beneath the visible, to the currents of possibility that threaded through every stone, leaf, and ripple of light. He realized the veil's greatest lessons were never explicit. They were internalized, experienced through the dance of observation, choice, and reflection. Hours, or what might have been days, passed as he traversed the grove. A gentle warmth drew him toward a clearing where a bridge of silver light spanned a canyon of deep shadow. On the far side, a luminous structure rose, its form crystalline yet fluid, pulsating with energy that seemed to respond directly to his presence. Crossing the bridge demanded focus beyond the ordinary. Misalignment of thought or emotion caused the threads of light to shimmer erratically. Orion walked steadily, mindful of every step, aware that the veil's subtle test measured not only action but intention and composure. Reaching the far side, he entered the structure, a chamber suspended in air, glowing faintly from within. Inside, reflections of countless travelers flickered, some moving forward, some trapped in hesitation, all preserved in the light. Orion understood that this was a nexus, a place of both reflection and foresight. The veil had brought him here to confront not danger, but understanding, to navigate Eldoria fully. One must learn to see beyond immediate perception, to comprehend consequence without fear, to move with clarity and purpose. In the center of the chamber, a spiral of light rose, twisting toward a distant ceiling invisible to the eye. It beckoned him upward, yet demanded introspection. Orion closed his eyes and let the veil's rhythm synchronize with his own heartbeat, sensing the patterns of intention and consequence. Slowly, deliberately, he ascended the spiral, each step illuminating insights previously inaccessible. Memory and possibility intertwined. Lessons once hidden revealed themselves. Understanding deepened. The veil was no longer a distant enigma, it was an extension of perception, a mirror of the mind, and a guide for those willing to engage fully. Emerging at the summit, he looked across Eldoria and felt a profound connection to the realm. The bridges, spires, rivers, and islands were not mere constructs, they were echoes of thought, of choice, of awareness manifest. The silver mist figure waited at a distant bridge, a constant reminder of guidance yet to be fully revealed. Orion felt the thrill of anticipation mingled with reverence. The journey would continue, the paths would diverge, and the veil's whispers would guide, challenge, and illuminate. Yet for the first time, he sensed his readiness not merely to observe, but to participate, to shape, and to walk fully within the rhythm of Eldoria. And as he descended toward the next path, the veil pulsed around him, alive, patient, and infinitely aware, promising that each step forward would uncover deeper truths, more profound mysteries, and the challenges that would forge the next phase of his journey. The veil's pulse had grown stronger, almost tangible, as Orion stepped into the glimmering valley that stretched before him. The floating islands, rivers of light, and crystalline bridges were no longer distant curiosities. They were living, dynamic, and reactive to his very presence. Every thought, hesitation, or intent left ripples across the surfaces of the rivers and the patterns etched into the stones. The veil had begun to speak more clearly now, not in words, but through resonance, reflection, and movement, teaching him to sense not only the physical paths but the currents of possibility that underpinned them. Orion approached a grove where the trees arched into perfect spirals, their leaves shimmering with inner light. Within their shadow, pools reflected moments from his past, images of decisions he had made, choices that had led him here. One pool, larger and darker than the rest, shimmered ominously. As he looked into it, he felt the tug of hesitation. The veil whispered through the surface, a subtle urging. Courage must be tempered by insight. A single step forward would not only carry him into the depths of the unknown, but would also shape the veil itself, leaving a trace that could echo for ages. He dipped a hand into the pool, feeling its energy surge through him like liquid fire. Visions cascaded across his mind, paths that diverged, outcomes that spiraled infinitely, consequences that intertwined in complex patterns beyond comprehension. Each ripple of water seemed to reflect not merely the world outside, but the essence of intention itself. Orion realized the magnitude of the veil's design. Eldoria was not simply a realm to traverse, it was a consciousness that mirrored the inner landscape of those who entered. Understanding it required a union of perception, will, and empathy. From the far side of the grove, a bridge formed, delicate yet luminous, stretching over a chasm that seemed to fall into infinity. Across it, the silhouette of the silver mist figure emerged once more, motionless, a subtle beacon in the shifting landscape. The bridge shimmered and pulsed with an almost sentient energy, responding to the alignment of his focus and the steadiness of his heart. Crossing it demanded presence and precision. Any wavering could cause the threads of light to falter. Step by step, Orion moved forward, feeling a rhythm that resonated deep within his chest, an echo of the veil's heartbeat. Reaching the far side, he entered a hall of crystals, each facet refracting light into intricate patterns that danced across walls, floor, and ceiling. The air vibrated with quiet voices, layered and interwoven, like the memory of countless travelers preserved within the realm. Each reflection was a lesson, a reminder, a whisper of choices once made and their unfolding consequences. Orion understood that the veil's lessons were experiential. They could not be read or observed passively. They demanded engagement, a melding of mind and spirit with the very pulse of Eldoria. At the chamber's center, a sphere of liquid silver hovered, rotating slowly, and within it shimmered visions of possible futures. As Orion reached out, the sphere expanded, enveloping him in light. He saw his own potential paths, branching endlessly, each decision a thread in a tapestry that stretched beyond the horizon. One path shimmered brightly, lined with bridges, spirals, and illuminated rivers, hinting at harmony, understanding, and mastery of the veil. Another flickered dimly, filled with hesitation and uncertainty, reflecting the consequences of fear and indecision. The vision was overwhelming, yet exhilarating. He felt both infinitesimal and immense, Caught in the magnitude of choice, the silver mist figure appeared at the edge of the sphere, its presence reassuring yet commanding. Without speaking, it conveyed a truth Orion could feel deep within. Mastery of Eldoria required not only courage and perception, but a willingness to accept uncertainty, to trust intuition, and to act with clarity and purpose. The veil, though patient and infinite, was also exacting. Its lessons were not merely tests, they were invitations to grow, to evolve, and to discover the depths of one's own consciousness. Beyond the chamber, the path led to a vast expanse where floating islands stretched endlessly, connected by bridges of light that twisted and coiled unpredictably. Orion sensed the presence of other entities here, not immediately visible, but perceptible through shifts in light, sound, and the resonance of the veil itself. They were echoes, guides, perhaps remnants of those who had traversed the realm before him. Each carried insight, caution, and wisdom, offering subtle guidance for those who could perceive and interpret it. As he navigated the islands, the veil's whispers intensified, layering lessons upon lessons. Shapes and patterns flickered at the edge of perception, offering both challenges and opportunities. Bridges of light shifted in response to his intentions, some widening to provide safe passage, others bending to test balance, resolve, and focus. Every step was a negotiation, a dialogue with the realm, and every observation an opportunity to attune further to the rhythm of Eldoria. Eventually, Orion reached a central island, larger than any he had seen, bathed in a radiant glow that seemed to emanate from the very core of the veil. In its center stood a spiral tower, crystalline and fluid, pulsating with light that resonated perfectly with the rhythm of his own heartbeat. Here, the journey of understanding, of attunement, of engagement with Eldoria reached a pivotal threshold. The silver mist figure appeared once more, this time at the tower's apex, signaling the next phase of discovery. As Orion stepped toward the tower, he felt the full weight and depth of the veil's presence. The realm was alive, aware, and infinitely patient, and he understood that every choice, every act of observation, every moment of engagement would ripple through both the veil and his own being. The journey was far from over, and yet a profound clarity had begun to emerge. Eldoria demanded not only courage, insight, and intuition, but the willingness to embrace its mysteries fully, to engage with both wonder and challenge, and to let each step shape the unfolding story of the veil itself. And as he ascended the spiral toward the summit, Orion felt anticipation, reverence, and purpose, knowing that the next revelations would stretch both his perception and his spirit beyond all previous understanding, deepening the connection between self, veil, and the infinite possibilities that lay ahead.